Let's start things off, Lepore, with the two worst teams in the Eastern Conference.
Oof.
It is not looking good right now for the Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens. 15th and 16th, respectively, in the Eastern Conference. Both teams have looked bad this season, especially Montreal. And I get it. Montreal doesn't have Carey Price and Shea Weber and all the changes in the offseason and blah, 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 blah. I hear Habs fans telling me all the time, giving me all these excuses about why they suck this year. But it's been a disaster for both of these teams. So, Lepore, I'm going to pose this question to you first. Which team would you rather be moving forward in the short term and the long term for that matter?
God.
The Montreal Canadiens or the Ottawa Senators?
Okay. That's a tough one, Bruno. But okay, we'll start with the short term and then we'll get in the discussion, the two of us, about like the long term, because the long term's loaded. But in the short term, I would have to go with my hometown Ottawa Senators. And the reason why I say that is because had you shown me these records, had you shown me the Eastern Conference standings a few weeks ago for today's date, I'd ask myself what would be more shocking and what would be more disappointing. And I think for Montreal, after being the team that went all the way to the Stanley Cup final and just being in the market they're in and the expectations, I think that's the one that would have been more disappointing. I think that's the one that would have been more shocking. At the end of the day, the Sens this year, and who knows, like they may turn it around. But if you told Sens fans that they were going to get another high draft pick this year, like, you know, their kids were going to look okay, have some further development, and then get another high draft pick, I don't think they'd be that bothered by that. I really don't. Where if you look at Montreal, and I'm sure they'd be happy to get a high draft pick, but there would be some like shock there, like, whoa, like that's not what we expected.
And just to chime in, the Habs fans out there that are saying, you know, tank for Shane Wright and we're going to get the number one pick. None of you were expecting Montreal to be this bad. So don't sit there and lie to yourself and lie to other people saying that, oh, we knew this was going to happen. We knew this team was going to look this bad. You are lying.
I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen any of that.
You thought they were going to be this bad to start.
Those exist. I haven't seen any of that. People saying, oh, we knew it. This was the plan.
Oh, I see it all over social media, Lepore. I'm everywhere. And I see it from these Habs fans, you know, making all the excuses. No Philip Deneau. Again, no Price, no Weber. Like all these other changes. I don't want to hear it. I really don't want to hear it. Like no one expected the Habs to be this bad.
Should they be rattled about Caulfield getting sent down?
Oh God.
Oof.
What a disaster. Cole Caulfield was.
Is it a disaster though? Like that's the thing. It's like, do we get too like excited for these young kids? And it's like, we put too much of a big deal. Like he's got to spend some time in the minors. Because on the flip side, like I'll say, and this is a good discussion for the two teams, Stützle. If I remember correctly, he's got like 8 goals in his last 56 games. And the kid, it's funny because you watch him and you see the talent. Like it's crazy. Like when he's got the puck, his head's up on the power play, he looks amazing. He's just not producing. So would he be better served as well in the AHL? And that might come off as a hot take, especially in Ottawa, how much people love him. And I love him. I think he's a great player, but the numbers are the numbers. Like he's not scoring. And if anyone argued with me, and I'm not saying 100% that he should be put in the AHL, I'm just kind of throwing that idea out there. He has not scored a goal yet in the National Hockey League this year. If you sent him down to Belleville, I think it's fair to say that he wouldn't absolutely dominate. Like he'd obviously be a very good player and he would stand out, but it wouldn't be like bonkers domination where he doesn't belong. And maybe I'm wrong about that one. Maybe it would be. And just right now in the NHL, the puck's not going in for him. And we talk about advanced stats all the time, and we're sure they'll even out for Stützle. But just in comparison to the Caulfield thing, like you mentioned it being a disaster. So carry on. Like, let's hear why you think it's such a bad look for the Montreal Canadiens.
So the reason I say that is, first of all, going back to the playoffs and seeing how good he was during that playoff run for the Habs. He scored a lot of big goals, and it wasn't even just his ability to score goals in timely moments. it was just his ability to generate offense consistently. Him and Nick Suzuki, game in and game out, it didn't matter who they were playing. It seemed like those two were the most dangerous players on the ice for the Montreal Canadiens. It was not Tyler Toffoli or Brendan Gallagher or Philip Deneau. And I know Philip Deneau is obviously more of a defensive two-way center, but it was those two guys that were generating all the offense. And then heading into the season, Caulfield and Trevor Zegras on the Anaheim Ducks were the two betting favorites to win the Calder Trophy.
There you go. Okay.
They were the two betting favorites to win the Calder Trophy. I think Zegras, I want to say Zegras was number 1 and Caulfield was number 2, but their odds were very, very close. So to see Caulfield after less than 10 games, or was it right at the 10-game mark, for him to get sent down to the Laval Rocket, just a brutal look for a team. Again, I think we all knew that team was going to take a step back to a certain degree. Like I did not think that they would be this bad. No one did, like I said. But I thought that they would at best be fighting for a wild card spot. But to see them just completely out of it, and quite frankly, to see them really with almost no chance at this point to make the playoffs. I know we're still early in the season, but I'm pretty much ready to put the fork in this team to make the playoffs at this point, considering how good the Eastern Conference is and how good the Atlantic Division is specifically. I mean, how on earth does this team even fight back to compete for a playoff spot at this point? They're dead last in the conference and they just look bad.
Yeah. See, and like, again, to like the question of like, what team would you rather be? Again, like I come back to Ottawa because like we saw from them last year, they had an amazing second half of the season and they really turned it on. So I'm not saying like that will happen for sure, but like you can kind of see it. Like they're a young team. It might happen. Things might snap into place. So for sure, in the short term, I think we both agree we'd rather be the Ottawa Senators. In the long term, is it that much of a debate, or like how we looking at this one?
So I do agree. In the short term, I'd rather be the Senators because I just think that they're a better team. And maybe things will change for Montreal when Carey Price comes back, and they're going to call up Caulfield again at some point. I don't think he's going to spend the entire rest of the season in the AHL. But my issue with the Senators is, and this is even going back to last season, where we responded to comments from Mark Mathot, former Senators defenseman, who said that in 2 to 3 years, the Senators were going to be a better team than the Leafs. And at the time,
and not even close, Bruno.
Exactly. He also added it, and it won't even be
close. Yeah.
And just looking at the Ottawa Senators, I mean, how could you even make a comment like that? We are now on year 4 of the Senators rebuild, and they have not even come close to sniffing the playoffs. I don't want to always bring everything back to the Leafs, but for those listening, do you realize that the Toronto Maple Leafs, for those Senators fans listening, the Toronto Maple Leafs made the playoffs in year 1 of the rebuild? When Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Connor Brown, Hyman, these guys were all rookies. The Leafs made the playoffs in year 1, and they have now made the playoffs 5 consecutive seasons. The Ottawa Senators are now in, is it year 5 of Thomas Chabot? He's already signed his contract. Stützle's second year in the league. Year 4 of Brady Tkachuk, who just signed his deal.
Year 3 for Norris. Yeah.
Year 3 for Josh Norris. And this team is still not even close to sniffing the playoffs. So for those Senators fans out there, and again, I like the Senators. I like the players they have. I think they're headed in the right direction. But at some point, Lepore, we have to see this team compete for a playoff spot. I'm not saying, compete to win the division. Compete as a friggin' wild card at some point. Yeah. Show us that you've taken the next step. And right now, just looking at the standings and looking at some of the numbers, this team isn't there yet. Simple as that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, a lot of sense talk here in Ottawa. What I kind of mentally set as like what should be a goal for the Sens this year was 500. Like get 82 points. So I thought like that'd be like, okay, you guys win 500. You're in the 80s. Like that's great. The thing is with Ottawa, I think long-term as well, I'd rather be the Sens. And like, I'll step back on that when I get to a later point. Like I look at the Sens lineup. Okay. Thomas Chabot is a premier defenseman. They have him locked in. Tkachuk is a great piece. He's now the face of the franchise, being the captain. Stützle, as much as he's had a slow start to the season and maybe even a slow start to his career from a statistics standpoint, we know the talent's there. Josh Norris, I think, is a great player. So the Sens
too. I like
Batherson. I was gonna say that Batherson deal. I think that's like low key gonna be like a steal deal for the Ottawa Senators. Like that kid's real. I've liked that kid since junior. Very, very good player. So there's a lot of you can fire out a lot of positives with regard to like what is rising for the Ottawa Senators. But I will say, and it comes back to the discussion of like rebuilds and how to do it. It's like we've said it before on the show. Like everyone thinks just because you rebuild and you stockpile draft picks that like you're going to be good. It's like, no, it's still hard to do. You can't sign guys for too much and you have to be calculated, and there's free agency guys you bring in. It's loaded. It's hard to do. It's hard to be a good team in the National Hockey League. So I do feel for the Senators that they are rising together like all these young kids and they're going in the right direction. But I think their next move or two are their next, I'll say the next trade they make, but like I'm saying, whether it's a free agent signing or a deal they make, like they've talked about their D, they've had problems in the back end. If they should trade a forward for a defenseman, these are important. Like these are really and truly important because they're getting to that point where you mentioned like the periods of these guys' career they're in, where like, hey, Shabbat is signed, he's locked in, he makes $8 million. Like Brady Tkachuk makes over $8 million. They have like guys like Zaitsev and Colin White and Batherson making like real money. Matt Murray, like 6.25, 2 more years after this. So like they have money locked in. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying there's got to be some critical maneuvering by Dorion with this team, because like one mistake, I think it's like teetering for them. I really do. And again, there's a lot of this team that I like. There's a ton of the Ottawa Senators that I really like. I just think it's a very, very delicate situation.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said about the Senators. I am more bullish on them moving forward, just looking at the rosters of both teams, Senators and Habs. I just think the Senators have not only more talent, but more players that I think could continue to get better long-term,
like
as opposed to the Montreal Canadiens right now.
Yeah.
I think that's what separates those two teams. So I think we can both agree then, Lepore, that both in the short term and the long term, that we would take the Ottawa Senators.
We would.
All right. So again, leave your comments
down below, Montreal.
If you disagree with us or if you agree with us. I'd love to hear the opinions of both Senators and Habs fans.